So the Prime Minister has finally said to the automobile industry that you say bye-bye to the diesel-based four-wheelers, otherwise what we'll do is that we'll increase the taxation to that extent that the production will itself become unviable. And that is the problem here, because this has caused a lot of controversy. He's stating that he'll advise the finance minister to increase the taxation further as 10% of GST on the diesel based vehicles, on diesel fuel. That is creating a lot of controversy because diesel fuel already enjoys a lot of taxation by the government. And here we need to further understand that why Transport Minister is specially focusing on the diesel, not on the petrol based vehicles, because diesel and petrol are two conventional fuels which are utilized in the transport sector, and that is why the emissions of the transport sector are so high in terms of the overall carbon dioxide emissions. And although we need to further reduce this, like we need to use these electric vehicles, but why only diesel based vehicles are being focused so much? Why not the petrol engines, the vehicles where petrol is utilized as an engine in the engine? So that's what we have to consider here. So here let us understand first of all the difference, from where do these type of fuels come from. You might have heard that petrol comes from crude oil, diesel comes from crude oil, but here we also need to explain the basics a little bit, that how this process happens, because here also they are in continuous news. UPSC can ask questions sometimes. So this is a picture taken from the NCERT science and tech books itself. This is about fractional distillation as a process. What is happening here? We have extracted crude oil. Now what will happen is that this crude oil will contain multiple components. What type of components? Like there is petrol, kerosene, diesel, paraffin wax, and so on and so forth. Now what will happen here? We will just put up this into a liquid which has to be distilled. The overall these components, they are miscible liquids. They are so miscible that you can't just separate it by physical separation. And that is why this chemical process will be used. You will boil this, and when you will boil it, there will be a fractionated column, a column like this. Now what will happen in this column? That's interesting, because what's there is that there are these spaces here. Once it is boiled, the entire liquid will not boil like water and vaporize like water at one go. The different components will vaporize at different levels. Like we have this butane and propane inside the crude oil. It has a lower boiling point, so it will vaporize first, and it will go to a higher height because it is low boiling point. It is less heavier, less denser compared to these other materials inside, other liquids inside the crude oil. So it will go up and finally condensate at a certain height. This height will be decided. Once it goes up, it goes away from the flame. So whatever substance, it goes up, the liquid after vaporizing, it goes up, and then after going, it will condense at some place because it is away from the heat source below, right? So it will condensate, and when it will condensate, we will just collect this for our use. And by the way, where is butane and propane are used in your daily life? This is in the LPG cylinders. The liquefied petroleum gas we use are nothing but a mixture of propane and butane, mostly in liquefied way. This is there. Now after which the density of petrol is there. Now petrol will move in the same manner after vaporizing and will be collected for utilization in the vehicles. After that we have the kerosene. So after that we will collect the kerosene, and finally diesel will move less, because first of all diesel is denser, more condensed form, and it has higher boiling point. So that way it will vaporize less and move, after vaporizing also move to a lesser distance, and finally at a lesser distance only it will get vaporized. So this is about diesel. And finally at the bottommost of the pyramid, at the bottommost of the column, we have the paraffin wax. The same substance you use in your Vaseline jelly, that is the paraffin wax, and that is collected at the bottom along with other substances. So this is what you have to remember, the order by forming any trick, because this is important. And that is why the difference is there regarding petrol and diesel. that the petrol based engines are that is why designed in a different way, because they are less condensed, less heavy, whereas diesel is more heavier in nature. So that is why there is difference. And now we'll look at the difference between petrol and diesel engines to understand that why the diesel engines are more harmful here. So what is the difference here in both petrol and diesel based engines? The difference is regarding the way actually the fuels are burnt. So the overall process, like there is an engine, there is this combustion process, there is utilization of air, that is just the same, but little bit difference in the mechanism of how fuel is burnt here. So what's the difference here? The difference is that you might have heard a term called internal combustion engines, IC engines, that is used for petrol, guys. So what happens here? There is this IC engine. Now petrol is a much volatile component. Volatile, that means it will vaporize faster. We have seen in the fractional distillation process also petrol vaporizes faster, right? So it is more volatile. Now such type of a volatile substance, it actually needs very less sort of ignition or a spark. So what we'll have here in the IC engine, we'll just create a little bit of spark by spark ignition process. So there is this ignition through the help of spark here, through the spark ignition process, and when there will be this ignition, what will happen? There is petrol inside the engine and there is air. So we have the fuel and the oxidizer. By the way, you have to learn how burning takes place. There are two important methods, two important components of a burning process. There should be continuous fuel, like you have petrol, diesel, hydrogen based fuel, or you should have a conventional fuel like petrol, diesel, and then you should have an oxidizer. So these are the two components here, and you have to further learn about it, but for our purpose both these components are right now there in this IC engine, and that's the idea here, that there will be this spark created, then the fuel and the air, they'll react, and finally we have the burning process happening. This is there, right? How you can further understand it in your simple language? Consider burning up of a candle. So in candle you have your wax, and wax with the help of a spark, with the help of the initial ignition you do with the matchstick, the wax is burning as a fuel, and how it is burning? With the help of oxidizer, that means common air. So this is nothing but a burning process, and this is happening here also, but in a different manner to provide more energy to the vehicle. Yes, but the process is basic, which is there. Now compare it to diesel. Do we require just a spark in diesel? Is diesel that volatile as a substance? Was diesel highly moving up in the fractional distillation column? We saw that diesel was at the bottom most, like almost in the bottom. So that's why, to try to understand here, diesel is less volatile as a substance and quite heavier, and you can't just burn diesel just with the help of a spark. It will not burn. It will simply not burn. If you will put diesel in a petrol based vehicle, do try it with your common vehicle, the two-wheeler or any scooty you have, where you are burning it with the help of petrol, and it is just having a petrol engine. Do try to do it there. Do put it diesel, it will not burn, it will not work. So this is the idea. Then how do you ensure that there is burning? So what it was done here is that finally it was realized that when you spray a diesel liquid into air, then it burns up. So either you have to modulate diesel or you have to modulate air itself. So what we do in diesel based engine is that we provide air from the atmosphere in this section, combustion section, but we provide high compression here. The compression ratio is very high compared to petrol. So the air gets highly compressed. So the oxidizer which you have for your engine for the burning is in a compressed way. So and so that when it will come into contact with the diesel, because the air and the oxidizer is in so high energy because of the compressed manner, that it will suddenly burn when these two things will come into contact. So this is how diesel engine is different than petrol engine. And one common thing which you should remember, that's why you need spark. But spark will not work in diesel engine. That is why diesel engine is not having any sort of spark. It is not a spark engine. In petrol, what happens is that there should be fuel, there should be air. Once you provide the spark, it will burn up. So the pre-mixing, that means mixing the fuel and the oxidizer, the air, before the burning takes place, that is possible. So they are already in a pre-mix stage. Why to separate them when there will be, after mixing also there is no harm. But this is not the case in a diesel based engine. You don't have to pre-mix, because first of all there has to be compression of the air, and then only we can ensure that there is proper reaction. So that is why no pre-mixing is needed here for better efficiency inside the process. So this is about the difference here. Now apply it to common scenario. I explained one common scenario that we inserted diesel into petrol, it was not working. What if I put petrol into diesel? Now petrol is a volatile substance, it can ignite even with the help of a spark provided air is there. Now you are putting that volatile substance into diesel based engine, and then you are burning it with the help of compression of air, and then the air and petrol are reacting together, and this will cause a problem because this can explode also, and that is why it is suggested that you don't have to put petrol inside the diesel engine. It's not like it will explode and it might cause harm, but even if little bit of detonation, that might damage the engine parts of your vehicle, and then you will not be able to utilize your vehicle for longer term, and that is why it is suggested never to use diesel, never to use petrol inside a diesel engine. This is what we understood. So from this we will try to now create the benefits of the diesel engine or the issues first. Let's take up the issues first, that why we should ensure that the diesel engine should not be preferred, or why there is this talk of abolition of diesel engine. So why there is talk of abolition of diesel engine? Simple, there is high carbon dioxide emissions, but as I explained here, there is this utilization of fuel more in the diesel engine. You are actually compressing the air a lot, there has to be the necessity of compressing the air, and because there is this necessity of compressing the air, there is high efficiency in the diesel engine. There is high energy content per liter which you get inside the diesel engine. So the amount of energy which will get inside the diesel engine, that will be more in diesel compared to the petrol. And then because of that, because we have high energy per liter content, and because we have high thermal efficiency here in the diesel engine. By the way, you don't have to write these things down, I will provide the handwritten PDF in the link of the video itself, beneath the link, so that will be there, but right now just focus on the concept. There is high thermal efficiency, so the air also, there is thermal efficiency is also related to compression of air, more compressed air is being used, so that is why the emissions, they are also higher of the nitrous oxides here. NOx you might have read in your environment books. What do NOx do? They are very harmful for the health. They help in formation of the peroxyacetyl nitrate in certain conditions. So they also contribute to smog, and then they are also harmful regarding respiration. They cause multiple health issues. So this is about NOx, that NOx are harmful here, and that is why diesel engines, because of the logic of the compression ratio, they cause high nitrogen oxide emissions compared to the petrol engines. And in the similar way, because everything has benefits and disadvantages of its own, this is one of the disadvantages, but this will see in the advantages itself, that high compression ratio is the advantage of the diesel based engines itself. But as of now, let us see further that what are the hazardous impacts here. As happens in both petrol and diesel, there is high import here. There is a report, now we can note down this data, that in this year, in 2022 to 2023, in this fiscal year, there was $158 billion of imports of crude oil as per the Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cell here. As per this, there was more than 150 billion imports here. This is a body in the Ministry of Oil. So this is there. Now you need to remember this. Whenever there is question about energy security, crude oil, petroleum, or this part, or about the need for decarbonization of the transport emissions, there you can mention that $158 billion was the crude oil import spending here, our crude oil import bill overall here, and that's why we need to be more energy secure. Now what's the problem here apart from this is that it's not a problem actually, because car makers are also gradually moving to the non-conventional fuel based vehicles. Why they are moving towards the non-conventional fuel based vehicles? Because there are incentives from the government also, like there are these Bharat stage 6 norms. So this is there. By the way, you have to tell in the comment boxes that how and when exactly this the journey towards the Bharat stage norm started, from which part of the world it has been inspired, and how we have moved on, like what is the standards there. I'll give a little bit of hint in the end also, but you also should engage, I think, in the comment boxes. So now we have seen about the abolition, that what is the reason that we are trying to ensure that the diesel based vehicles are not used. But as we said that everything has its own benefits. So why we were using the diesel based vehicles till now, particularly if you might have seen in your daily life, if we see the common two-wheelers, there we don't use diesel that often. Most of the transport vehicles in the two-wheelers are petrol based vehicles. But still, in the heavy duty vehicles, like suppose in a particular truck which is carrying high amount of goods here, we utilize the diesel based vehicles. Why do we use that? Because as we said earlier, they provide high energy content per liter, because air is used in a compressed way, and diesel also is much heavier compared to the petrol. So more carbon content, that means more calorific value and energy content we get from burning. Now what will happen here, if there is high energy content, the vehicles which are moving for long distances on continuous base for trade purposes, for transportation purposes, they will require diesel to cut down their cost and to also ensure that they are more fuel efficient. Because if there is high energy content per liter, less fuel will be required to travel up a certain distance, like 100 kilometers. If you require certain liters of petrol, then you will require less liters of diesel there. And then because you will require less liters, the energy, the overall cost will also reduce. And by the way, the cost of diesel in India is slightly less compared to petrol. Earlier it was very high before 2013. Before there was this, in 2013 we just decontrolled the prices of petrol and diesel. So government has this decontrol of prices of petrol and diesel. But before that there was high difference between the prices of diesel and petrol, around 25 rupees something. Do know about this aspect further, that what happened in this decontrolling of prices. What do we say when we say that we have decontrolled the prices of petrol and diesel? What do we mean exactly by it? So do know about it a little bit. Someday I will also explain this part. So overall, what is the scenario here? High compression ratio, energy efficiency, ease for the heavy duty vehicles, cost efficiency also, and then you don't require high voltage spark ignition. So what happens is that suppose you are providing a spark in an engine, and when you are providing a spark, what will happen is that you will require some friction to create a spark, to create a heat, and sometimes when a vehicle is not using proper fuel there, then it creates problem, because the spark is not just ignited, or the spark is not just created in one time itself. So then there is a problem, that how do we tackle this, and that actually creating a spark also requires fuel from outside, and that creates energy inefficiency if we have to again and again try to start our vehicle for creation of that spark. You might have seen in the times of winters, often these two-wheelers like Activas and all, scooters, what is there is that you have to try to start them again and again, and if they are not starting from self-start, you try to provide kicks to these, you just have to provide this mechanical force to the two-wheelers. That is nothing but about creating a spark. If the spark is not created, then there will be no burning. So that problem is not there with the diesel-based vehicles. So this is the this is what we need to remember here. So this is why we prefer these vehicles, and this was about the overall topic here. Little bit I have tried to tackle the taxation part also, that in present times in petrol and diesel, because these products along with certain components like aviation turbine fuel, they have been kept out of the GST regime. And that's why the state governments, they can apply their value added tax on these type of fuels. Like what do we mean by value added tax? Suppose the crude oil is being imported and now it is imported. Now what we have to do is that, or let's take a simpler example here. Let us take up the example of production of a biscuit here, that there is this wheat, there is this wheat in the crops. Now it will go to a factory to become a flour mill, and from this flour mill what we'll do is that it will go into a biscuit manufacturing unit to become a biscuit. So at each stage there is some value which is being created. Suppose this is 30 rupees per kg. The flour will might become 50 rupees per kg. Let us just take an example here, some random example. Biscuit might become 100 rupees per kg. So in each of these production process or value addition process, there is value addition. So the tax which you charge on these value addition is nothing but the VAT here, and that is being charged by the state governments regarding petrol, diesel, aviation turbine fuel and these type of fuels, so that their revenue is not that much impacted by introduction of a GST regime, and that is why they have been kept out, and there is a debate that we should include them in the GST, but this is overall about this. Little bit about the taxation regimes I have added in this document. You can see that also for clearing your basics, and for further doubts you can also put up it in the comment section, or you can also join my classes. I take the Samachar Manthan classes here. So thank you very much. Keep preparing.